Well, look, this conflict seems like a long way away, and we're sitting here talking about geopolitics and international alliances and so on. But for people here in the UK, this is going to impact the cost of living quite seriously. And any response by the Western world in terms of sanctions is going to have to consider the impact on voters here in the West in terms of their living standards. Russia is an energy superpower. It exports 40% of Europe's gas. We're seeing, in response to this serious military escalation overnight, we're seeing gas prices go up on wholesale markets. We're seeing oil prices go firmly above $100 a barrel for the first time since 2014. I'm sitting here on my phone looking at various obscure apps about food prices, the price of sunflower oil, the price of corn and wheat. Russia's the world's biggest wheat exporter. Ukraine and Russia between them control 80% of the world's supply of sunflower oil. These are very, very important basic commodities which feed into the shopping baskets of people all over the Western world. We've had a cost of living crisis brewing for some time here in the UK. And as Vladimir Putin knows, he can make that cost of living crisis here in the West much, much worse if he wants to. So while this seems like a distant war, it doesn't seem to many people watching GB News anything to do with Britain. This is going to affect all of us if this escalation continues.
Liam, there's a huge amount, isn't there, of Russian money here, particularly in London, described by some as London grad. We've been issuing these so-called golden visas for some time to wealthy Russians. Will we be negatively impacted, in terms of our affluence if we do go after Russian money? I mean, there are concerns that these sanctions will affect us.
Well, there will be some ritzy wealth managers in the City of London, financial planners, lawyers and so on, who may have their lucrative businesses hit a bit. But look, the real issue for us is if we really turn the screw on sanctions, and as you say, Cobra's meeting now, the real issue is access to those Russian commodities if they retaliate, given their sanctions on us. There's almost no way that the Western world is going to cut Russia out of SWIFT. SWIFT is more than a messaging system. SWIFT is the way that banking transactions are settled across international borders. It's a system dominated by the US, and they can turn off that tap. On the other hand, we've got to realize that there are very, very serious Western business interests in Russia. BP, for instance, our thoroughbred oil company, owns a fifth of Russia's largest oil company. Boeing, the US aerospace giant, has massive ties to Russia. Russia controls world supplies of obscure sounding metals like palladium, titanium, of bauxite, which goes into aluminium. If the Russians want to make life difficult for us, then they really can. Russia and Ukraine control the world supply of something called neon gas, which is vital to make semiconductors that go into almost everything that's now manufactured these days. So this isn't a one-way street by any means. Yes, of course, in light of events overnight, there's shock, horror, disgust across much of the Western world, and politicians want to be seen to be doing something. But if they do serious sanctions that go beyond targeting a few oligarchs that frankly no one has ever heard of, then that will have real implications, not just for living standards here in the Western world, but for business, for jobs in the Western world. Russia is no longer the Soviet Union. It is very deeply connected to the Western world. Our businesses and our business interests and our living standards are very much intertwined. That's what makes this situation so different from conflicts and standoffs during the Cold War.